Hello everyone, Sandrak here. So this is probably going to be my final pre-release analysis video on Yoimiya. So this video is going to be about how to gear her exactly, basically in terms of weapon and artifacts. So for this video, I'm only considering sub DPS Yoimiya, as that is going to be her main play style for most people. Now of course, if you want to play her DPS, this is probably not the right video for you. My main argument of playing her as a sub DPS, so basically only using her E and her Q instead of playing her as a main DPS, is because for her main DPS, the charge shot damage is okay. However, the 3 extra thing the charge shot produces, it only deals 23% each, which is very low. So overall, I believe it's not worth it for her to build charge shot Yoimiya as for the off time when her E is not available, just because the charge shot damage is so low compared to Ganyu. And on top of that, for Ganyu, everything is AoE. As long as you're roughly in the area you can hit, because most of the damage comes from the AoE afterwards, not the stage 2 charge shot arrow itself. Whereas in Yoimiya's case, the stage 2 charge arrow itself does the vast majority of the damage, which means you must hit, otherwise you're losing like 90% of your damage. This is why I believe that it is much easier to build her as a sub DPS. So with that said, let's get started. For weapon wise, assuming we are already talking about sub DPS, then Rust is going to be the best weapon for the absolute reason that it buffs the auto attack by a lot at the cost of charge attack. But as I have said before, she is not encouraged to use charge attack, so there is no point building her in charge attack. So Rust is the best weapon. Now of course, the second best one is going to be the new Inazuma craftable, the Demon Slayer bow. This one has similar passive to the Rust, but it also buffs charge shot as well. Now of course, I've said before, it doesn't buff Yoimiya doesn't use charge shot, so the charge shot part buff of this is not very useful, which means if you actually do the damage calculation, R2 Rust has basically the same passive as R5 Demon Slayer bow. However, with that said, the Demon Slayer bows, the base attack is lower, but the attack increase is higher overall, so with that it kind of balances out. So I would say if you do not have a lot of bow prototypes, then use Rust. Even R2 is fine. And if you do have a high refinement of Demon Slayer bow, then you can consider using Demon Slayer bow as well. Both of these two are around the same. Unless you have a high refinement Rust, then definitely use Rust. As for 5 stars, basically use any 5 star you have other than allergy to the end. Everything is good. Basically, I believe the 3 are Skyward Harp, which increases crit rate, the Sundering Pulse, which is her actual new bow, and the final one is Almost Bow, which you do not get the full passive stacks, but you still do get quite a bit of the passive, so that's good enough. Plus Almost is a 5 star. 5 stars are better than 4 stars by any case. So overall, that's the options I would give. And finally, if you do not have any of the above, if you have Battle Pass, go for Iridescent Hunt, and if you have traded in the shop, go for Black Cliff Warble. So I would say definitely put any 5 stars first, other than Elegy for the end. For 4 stars, Rust first, then Demon Slayer bow, and if you do not have any of the above, which is very unlikely, then Iridescent Hunt or Black Cliff Warble are both good. Now moving on to her artifacts. For artifacts, we're generally arguing between the 3 choice of 4-piece Lava Walker for a pure Pyro team, 4-piece Crimson Witch of Flames for a Pyro reaction team, and 4-piece basically Shimnama's Reminiscence for whatever team you want to put her in, because at that point the element reactions does not matter. So with this said, we can sort of simplify the 2-piece and 4-piece effects up to a point where you can directly looking at how much damage they deal. Now of course, this only looks at her E and her Q. Again, this basically ignores all auto attacks. So for 4-piece Lava Walker, we're looking at a 35% damage increase for normal attacks. For normal attacks under her E state, because it is increased pyro damage and her E state is pyro. And as for the defensive side, we're looking at a 40% pyro res increase, which is not useful in game. it is useful, but it's not cared about in game because all we want to do is damage. We do not want to go a defensive route in Genshin. As for 4-piece Crimson Witch of Flames, we're looking at a 22.5% overall damage increase in both in her auto attacks under her E state again, and we're looking at a 15% damage increase for her Q. Now, if you're wondering how I got these numbers, it's basically calculations. I will probably make a video relatively soon regarding how to calculate damage and also how to calculate everything in Genshin Impact, basically damage wise, but as for now, these are the numbers we're going by. So, and finally, for the Shimenawa's Reminiscence, we're looking at 50% damage increase for normal and charge attack, and just normal attack, no charge attack, and on top of that, we're looking at 18% attack increase. However, the downside is less Q, but overall, her Q doesn't do as much damage as her E, so this downside is acceptable. And I believe with that said, we can clearly tell that 50% damage increase in auto for under her E state, which is Shimenawa's Reminiscence, is going to be her best artifact for this build. As for how to pair with the artifact itself, so for Sands, you always want to bring attack percent on all 3 occasions. For the circular position, you always want to bring crit. So if you have enough crit rate, bring crit damage, otherwise bring crit rate. As for the goblet, if you are using Crimson Witch of Flames, or if you are using the level walker, you can bring pyro damage bonus, that is fine. However, if you're using the 4-piece Shimenawa's Reminiscence, you should bring an attack percent instead. Here is my reasoning. Yoimiya's E already brings 60% damage increase. On top of that, 4-piece Shimenawa's Reminiscence provides 50% damage increase, and on top of that, the passive of the Rust provides 40 to 80% damage increase. This is already way too much damage increase stacking to only 1 multipliers. Now, of course, I'll make a video later regarding how to calculate damage, but to prove things very quickly here, damage is made up of 8 different sections multiplied together. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative, and overall you do get a positive number that's guaranteed, but overall it's multiplied by 8 different sections together. Now, of course, if you have studied math up to, I believe, high school or higher, you will know that the best way to maximize the product of 8 different stuff multiplier is to have these 8 different stuff close to the same number as possible. Basically, doing a math here, saying 4 times 4 is going to be bigger than 3 times 5 for that simple reason. Now, of course, the reason here, what I'm trying to say here is you do not want to stack way too much into a single damage section. So in this case, you do not want to stack way too much into the damage bonus section, and as for a result, you would compensate by having some of the damage bonus section moving to the attack section, so you would have an overall higher number. This is why attack percent is actually going to be better on her than pyro damage bonus for the cup. Now, of course, that probably means a easier cup for most of you guys, because you probably have a random attack percent cup lying around with pretty good substats, so that is a bonus. So that's all I have for you today for this video. Again, for weapon, if you have 5 stars, go for 5 stars, except for allergy for the end. If you do not have 5 stars, first choice is Rust, second choice is Demon Slayer Bow. As for the artifacts, if you are going for sub DPS, 4-piece Shimenawa's Reminiscence is going to be the best artifact. Now, of course, do not force that. If you do not have that, using 4-piece Lavaoker or 4-piece Crimson is still fine for the mid game. Do want to make sure to swap to 4-piece Shimenawa's Reminiscence when you finish building her. And finally, for the substats, attack percent stands, crit for both crit for circlet depending on crit rate or crit damage, and for the goblet section, if you're using any other artifact set, then go for power damage bonus. However, if you're using Shimenawa's Reminiscence, go for attack percent. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you like the content, please consider subscribing. Thank you and have a nice day.